Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Tryon, and this is the Heatwave quilt, and that's what we're going to be making today. This is a very beginner-friendly. If you're more of an advanced quilter, you're going to whip this up in no time. Even beginners are going to, put this together quickly. We've got this sort of beautiful gradient of color, and you can whip this quilt up in a weekend, which is perfect for sort of a summer project. And especially a quilt that you'll maybe only bring out seasonally. Oftentimes we don't want to spend, a year making a quilt that's only going to be pulled out just for the summer months. So I love this quilt. It's a great way to use up solids. You could make a scrappy version too. All different scrappy yellows would look very cool in here. But it's just big blocks in sort of a gradient of color. So I'm going to take you through how to put this together from start to finish, including if you decide to long arm this. We're going to do a bit of quilting on the machine. I'm also going to show you what the long arm can do on this quilt. Of course, if you don't have a long arm, not to worry, maybe you'll just find it fun to watch the long arming process. Or maybe you'll want to send it to us and get that design put on your Heatwave quilt. I'm also going to show you how you can quilt this yourself on your own machine, so not to worry. But in order to keep this whole quilt start to finish nice and succinct, I'm going to have some stuff pre-made and skip ahead and not finish every single step, just as a way to get you launched and working on your quilt. So let's get started making the Heatwave. So I've got my kit. Let's get it opened up. We're going to start by pressing the fabric and cutting. And what I'm going to tell you is I'm taking it right out of the bag here. I have not pre-washed this fabric. It's your choice if you'd rather pre-wash, all good. Every fabric has a little bit of shrinkage, but this isn't too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and set my yellow aside for right now, because when we're cutting, we're going to cut our main colors together and our yellow separately. So I'm going to start with our main fabric 1, fabric 2. So the lighter the fabric, so the lightest fabric, fabric 1, fabric 2, fabric 3, fabric 4, and however you want to lay yours out is totally fine. The gradient of color is sort of what kind of lends to, like that heat wave kind of feel, like the temperature is going up. All right, so let's just start like we always do. Getting the main wrinkles, the fold wrinkles, out of our fabric. I'm just going to give it a little spritz with some flatter. And I'm going to actually do so much of this ironing and cutting at the same time. When it's big, simple things like this, you may as well try and save some steps, because that's what gets you through these even quicker. So I'm going to give each layer a little spritz. You don't have to use this, but it really is nice. Plus, this one is the celebration scent and smells like summer. So I'm lining it all up. Guess it would help if I turned my iron on. And then I'm going to also lay out my yellow. And let's just take a look at the pattern here. Now, I got to say, this is a very small, just a little card of a pattern. This is how it comes. I could use a little more, I got to be honest. So luckily, I've made this a few times now, and I can bring you more, but I'm sorry that the pattern doesn't bring you more. But that's why we'll do this together, so that will help. There's a bit of, when we're cutting, doing some diagonal lines. So if you have a laser, this would be a great time to make sure the laser is on your sewing machine. And we're going to, like I said, cut the yellow and then cut our colored fabric, because it all needs to be the same. If you're just following along here, you need 3/4 of a yard of each of the colors, and you need 3/4 of a yard for the sun, and then 5/8 of a yard for the binding. So I think we've got, and we've sent everybody a little more. I think we sent a full yard when we were doing up kits. But if that's what you were using at home, I'm just going to see. This is the binding too. So I'm just going to see which one is the 3/4 of a yard. Yeah, this one's just 1 yard. So this is going to be for the sun. This is going to be for the binding. And this needs to be ironed too, so we may as well just put it down. All right, let's give this a good pressing. And I am using the steam, so it's going through all of those layers at one time. Best iron ever. So you can see now all of our layers. Now the bottom one, yeah, I could use a little more. Just you can start with the top, but just leave it a little longer and it'll get all the way through. Or you could take it all and give it a flip. And start on this side, just for any little extras that didn't get through to the bottom. I'm all for shortcuts that work and save time and shortcuts that don't cut corners are the key. Because while we want to save time, we don't necessarily want things to not turn out. We want to be doing it all justice. So, all right, bottom part here. Isn't that iron so good? This is the Maven by Reliable. So you can find it on homemade.ca. It's the iron I use the most. And then even that side looking pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to take all my colors except the yellow over to my mat, all layered up. Watch out, flatter. There we go. And because all of these are the same in each section, we can cut them at the same time. That saves a lot of time. But I will tell you a little hint to get your mind wrapped around how this is going to come together. We're putting together the entire row of suns first. And then we'll be putting together, sewing these together, sewing these together, sewing these together, and then putting the sides on. So this is going to act eventually as one long sun strip. And then this is going to be one long strip, and this is going to be one long strip, and then they will come together. So if you have that in your mind as you're building this quilt, it's going to help, because we kind of look at it like in this linear way, but really when you were assembling it, it's going to go vertically, not horizontally. So keep that in mind. Okay, so we'll keep the pattern close by here. So it actually does start in the pattern with the yellow. So maybe I should do that first. So we're going in order in the pattern. So I'll set these over on the ironing board and bring the yellow over. So the first cut is 8.5 by width of fabric. And then it's sort of like the writing here is not great, like the spacing and everything, but so we want one strip of 8.5 by WOF, which is width of fabric. And then we want 3 8.5 by 8.5 inch squares and 2 8.5 by 4.5 inch squares. And so what that is 1, 2, 3 squares here, and then 2 rectangles on the end. So that's what we're cutting first. And to do that, I'm going to fold my fabric selvage to selvage so that it fits on my cutting mat and turn it over. And I'm going to go ahead and work from this side here. I'm going to grab my big ruler. I have an 8.5 inch wide cutting ruler, which is really helpful for this because then I don't need to count over on the mat. I can just count, or I just know my ruler equals 8.5. So I'm going to bring this over so you guys can see from this side since we're going to use the ruler. So salvage to salvage, best you can to line it up. And of course, we want to start with a fresh edge. So try to find a line on your mat that even though a salvage edge isn't perfect, we'll be squaring that up at some point too. So I'm going to go ahead and just take off a wee smidge so that we're starting with a square edge. And it'll probably be, like for me, it's a little more off the bottom than it is off the top. So good. And now what I can do, if you've got an 8.5 inch ruler, you can just line the edge of your ruler up on the edge of where you cut and do your strip. If you don't have an 8.5 inch ruler, you can count over 8.5, or you can count over 8.5 on your mat here. So like counting over like this. But I've got an 8.5 inch ruler, so I'm just going to cut right up. And then before I move it, let's just see what the next cut is. So 8.5, and we're going to do those 2. And then we want 2 4 7/8 by width of fabric cut into 16 4 7/8 by 4 7/8 inch squared. So you can go ahead and measure over 4 7/8 right away while this is lined up. I'll move this. So to do that, I'm going to find 4 7/8 on my ruler. 1, 2, 3, 4. And 7/8 is, Jason, maybe you could zoom in as much as you can on the overhead, because if you're, yeah, let's see if we can, we'll try to focus in there. Yeah, okay, so 7/8 is this mark right here, because this is, I know this maybe for some seems like simple math, but for many of us, that just escapes us. So 4 7/8 is actually this mark right here. I'm going to bring it over so you can see it totally on the camera. So there's our straight piece. And now we've got one square, 2, go lower. 1 square, 2 square, 3, 4. And then we need another 7/8. So each one of those tiny ticks. So basically, it's, these are all an 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7/8, right? That last one, that little tick. So I'm going to line up, and I'm sorry if you already know this, but also you're welcome for the people who didn't know this, because sometimes those 7/8 or 3/8 or whatever, it's like, really? But that's where you count over those tiny little ticks. And so there's 8 8/8 in a hole. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's the 7/8 mark. And so if you mark up all the way along your whole thing. Okay, we can probably zoom back out. Your whole ruler, then you know you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7/8. And so you can go ahead and cut 4 and 7/8. So that's one strip. And then we need 3 inches. So we can move this over and go 3 inches. So we're on this step here now, like the final. We need one strip, 3 inches by width of fabric. So 1, 2, 3 on my ruler. And as long as it's showing 3 all the way up and down, then we can go ahead and cut that. And you've got quite a bit left here. So if you miscut in some way or you need a little more, you're good. All right, I'll set these over. I'm going to go back up to step 1, which was the 8.5 by 8.5. We need 3 squares of 8.5 by 8.5. So you're going to just keep, what I do like about the card is that it's small and it's handy. You can kind of keep it with you. All right, so let's cut a couple of 8.5-inch squares. I'm going to just line this up on my mat so that my fresh cut is totally squared off with my line on my mat. I'm going to take off the selvage, so we don't need that. Okay. And now I'm going to just use my ruler to go over 8.5. There we go. And we need 3 of these. So 1, 2, 3. All right, and we can just set those aside for when it's time to build our big sunshines. All right, off they go. And then out of that same strip, 8.5, we need some 4.5-inch pieces. So let's take what's left. And it says we need 2 for the bottom and top partial sun, sort of the sunrise and sunset, so to speak. We're going to go over 4.5. So we'll use our ruler, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then line up the half mark along our cut line here. And we'll cut 2 of those. So 1, 2, 3, 4.5. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Yes, measure twice, Jen. There we go. And then we can set those aside with our other suns. And we've got a little extra here. Okay, I'm going to bring over my 4 7/8 strip now, because here we need 4 7/8, and then we need 4 4.5. So make sure you're not cutting this on the fold, because you're going to need to trim this down to 4.5 once you've got your 4 7/8 out of it. Now that we know how to read a 7/8 mark, we're good to go. So again, I'm just lining up my squared up edge with the line on my mat so I know everything's nice and straight. I'm going to cut off that wee bit of selvage and then measure over 4 7/8. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's find that little tick again, a little small mark. And 7/8, 7/8. There we go. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7/8. You get better at finding it as you go. You don't have to move them out of the way. I just tend to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7/8. Okay, so now we've got 4 and 7/8 squares. All right, I'm going to set them with the rest of my yellow. And now the rest of this strip, I'm going to turn around. It'll fit on my mat. I have a 36-inch mat. Or sorry, I have a 24-inch long mat by 36. So this is just enough. I'm going to line up that edge. It should be square on both sides still. And I want to subcut this into a 4.5-inch strip. So we're just taking off a smidge. So I'm going to line up the 4.5. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Right here. And I'm just going to take off that little wee edge. Oops, don't lose it, Jen. All right. So now we have a 4.5-inch strip, and we need to subcut that 4.5-inch strip into 4.5-inch squares. So you might want to label these if because they're very close in size to the other ones. Or you can just wing it because there's not that many pieces. All right, take off the selvage. And now we're going to go over 4.5. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. 1. 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Did I make that one big? No. Phew. See, sometimes when I go fast. These look like cheese slices. Is that what you guys are thinking? That's what I was thinking. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Yum, grilled cheese. 3 grilled cheese. And 1, 2, 3, 4.5. All right, 4.5 cheese slices. That's what we've got here. All right, I'm going to just set those. And I'm going to be careful not to pile them on my other stack here because, you know, they're very, very similar in size. So set those aside. We have a wee bit of extra. And now I can take my final strip and I'm going to cut 4 3.5, or sorry, not 3.5, 3 by 3 squares. So it's already a 3-inch strip. So let's cut. Cut off that selvage. And then just 3 inches, 1, 2, 3. And yeah, 4, we need 4 of them. So 1. 1, 2, 3. Now we're more into charcuterie size cheese slices. Okay, stop talking about cheese and measure 3. 1, 2, 3. There we go. One, 2, 3. Okay, that's 4 of those. We'll stack them up on our sunshine charcuterie. And next up, We need 1 2.5. Oh gosh, what am I doing here? Yellow. Okay, you guys, I've just gone ahead and cut the background pieces. 2 7/8 into. Okay, I've totally cut this wrong. Stick with me here. Stick with me here. I was reading, you guys are probably shouting this out in the chat. I was reading the last 2 steps of the background fabric when I should have been reading the yellow. So what I need is 2. No wonder I have so much left over. Okay. Sorry, guys. All right. So the yellow, we've got our squares. We've got 2 4 7/8. So I've got 4 of these into 16. I actually need 16 of these squares. And I literally need 0 of these squares. So, well, frig. Okay, I'm going to set those over there. Luckily, I have extra fabric. No big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and cut another, well, I only have 4. So I need 12 more 4 7/8 by 4 7/8. And then you can literally stop cutting the yellow. You don't need this 3-inch strip. You don't need the 4.5 by 4.5. These are all instructions that you should be cutting the background fabric with. So now I have this nice headband, and that's how we're going to deal with that mistake. Okay, moving on. All good. So another 4, another 12 4 7/8 squares. That's what you'll do. I'll leave it for now because I've already got them cut over there. I was just like, see, maybe what we should do is scratch off when we're finished, like one part, because this is all very close together. See what I mean by this card being kind of annoying? All right, so once you've got that, let's just scratch it right off so we know that we've already done it. Okay, I'm going to set my yellow aside, the extra, and I've got my sunshine pieces. Remember, what you really need is 16 of these squares, 2 of these, and 3 of these. I wondered why I was cutting so much yellow. I'm like, sorry, guys. Forgive me. All right, those are going aside. And I'm going to bring in my colors, as if anyone is going to believe anything I say from now on, but it's all good. It happens. It happens to me all the time. I'm sure it happens to you too. Okay, I'm going to bring in my colors, and this is where I guess it gets a little dicey when you're going to cut it all at once and potentially make a mistake. But we have sent you a little more just in case. And this time I'm going to talk less about cheese and pay more attention to the actual instructions. Thank you to everyone who was shouting at their screen. You don't need to do that. I heard you in my soul. All right, I'm just trying to line up best I can all of my 4 fabrics here. It doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to square them up, but we do want it to try to be as lined up as possible so that we aren't inadvertently wasting, so that if we have an incident, as one does, that we still have fabric left. See, and not a big wrinkle in the, to correct it. Okay. First up, from the background, we need 1 18.5-inch strip by the width of fabric. So that's huge, very big. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold this in half. This is a very thick stack here. So you're going to use your muscles and hopefully a new cutting blade, because that'll help, so that this fits on your mat. Make sure you don't have any wrinkles in this big thing. Okay. So in this case, I am going to use my mat this time, and I am going to take off just a smidge. Pull it over. I'm pulling it over past my, and just make sure you're catching all of your layers, that there isn't one layer in here that's way, way over. Like, see this one? It's quite a bit, this one's quite a bit further over. So I can try to pull it up. Okay, and let's just take off and square that up. Just make sure you're catching everything. And lots of muscle here, but you can easily go through all of those layers. You just have to push down a little harder. And then that way, everything's nice and squared up. And so now we can go ahead and measure over 18 and a half. And this is big, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 and a half. Could have just used the numbers on my mat, but for some reason I like counting out loud. So 18 and a half. And there we go. And now that is a big cut. So let's see. 18 and a half by width of fabric. And this is going to turn into 18 and a half by 31. We need one of each. And 18 and a half by 11. So basically we're cutting the end here and the end here. So I can open this up now in the middle. And I'll put my extra just aside, like on the ironing board or whatever. And square up the end. I'm going to run that sharp or nice square edge along my mat line. And I'm going to take off the selvage. Only half as thick this time. Okay. And so now we're going to measure over 31. That's big. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. And what I'll tell you is, if you measured over 32, or if you measured over just 30, as long as they're all the same, it's okay. Your quilt would just be bigger or smaller on the ends. It's not going to really affect anything. It's the 18 and a half that, needs to be perfect. But should I count over just to be sure? It's going to be fine. You probably should. All right. So there is the first set of big side pieces. See, like your quilt comes together pretty quick when you're dealing with 31-inch chunks. So that's good. So these can get set aside. And then what's left over here, let's bring it. And we shouldn't have to square up this end because we've got a nice sharp edge. Let's measure 18 by 11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Good. And with that cut, you have got all of those cut. Layering it up is really the way to go. Okay, I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to congratulate myself for not screwing any of that up. As the teacher of this class, you would think that would be expected. Really, I'm just your friend making this with you, okay? Okay. So now with what's left, now we can do all of that cutting that we already practiced doing on the yellow. Hopefully you didn't do it, just me. So next up, we've got the 4 7/8 by width of fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and use my edge that I've already got cut here. And now that we know what 4 7/8 is, it's going to be easy. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then give me 7/8. Got it. And slice. Nice and thick, lots of muscle there. So this is the extra. Set that over. And then remember, we need from the 4 7/8, we need to also, so we need 4 7/8, and then 4.5. But while we're at this part, I'll just set that over, and let's do a 3-inch strip. Remember what we did in the yellow, the 3-inch strip. 1, 2, 3. One, two, three. There we go. We have a little extra here. Make a little cute, scrappy banner. That'd be nice. Or little pillow tassels. Oh, that'd be cute. Okay, concentrate. And then we are going to subcut this afterwards. Okay, so let's go back to the 4 7/8. And remember, I'm not going to cut this on the fold because we do need to cut a 4.5-inch strip afterwards. So I don't want to inadvertently leave myself without enough length. So I'm opening it back up. This sort of like method of pulling your fabric down just when you need a little smidge. That's my technique. All right, we're cutting off the selvage, lining it up with our line on our mat here. Making sure you're getting all of the pieces. Am I? Yes, good. Okay, and now we're measuring over 4 7/8. And we need 4 of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7/8. Anybody got a little deja vu here? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7/8. One, 2, 3, 4, and 7/8. Okay, and one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7/8. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now I've got that 4 times in all my colors, and I'm going to just set that aside. And then I'm going to bring over the rest, because once I've got that, I need to subcut it into a 4.5-inch strip. So I can turn it around. It's nice and square already on one side. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. All the way up, all the way down. Take take off that little smidge. And then we can turn this around and cut 4.5-inch squares. And we need 4 of them. One, 2, 3, 4.5. One, 2, 3, 4.5. One, 2, 3, 4. Almost there. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. There we go. We have a little extra. So we've got our 4.5. We've got our 4 7/8. A little extra. Okay. I'm going to keep those kind of separated because they look the same but are a smidge different. Let's bring over our 3.5 strips by width of fabric. I'm opening this up. Trying to make sure the fabric's still all together. Find a straight line for it to balance on my mat. And take off the selvage. Did I get all the pieces? Got all the pieces, good. And I am going to make 4 3-inch squares. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. There we go. So I got 4 of those. And now I need a 2.5 by 16.5-inch strip. So this is going to be a little, so I'm going to go ahead and cut 16.5 first so that this fits on my mat. So find a spot on your mat that it's going to fit because it's still pretty long. Shouldn't need to square anything up because it's already been freshly cut. Just make sure your pieces are all still stacked. On this end, it's feeling a little not stacked. There we go. Okay, so let's measure over 16.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.5. So that's a half. Good. I'm going to count back just in case. Half, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yes! But I forget. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.5. Got it. See, you should remember the number that you land on. Then you don't have to do it 10 times. All right. Set the extra aside. And now remember, this actually needs to be 2.5-inch strip, but we just, so that it would fit on our mat, kind of did our cutting backwards. So sometimes when you cut on a fold, which I've done, and I don't know if we can zoom in right about here, like right here. Yeah, I'll move this over so that you can see it. I just want to point out, and just something to watch for when you cut, especially stacks on a fold, is sometimes you get this little bowing. See this little whoop in here? Like that's not the end of the world. Like you can make up for that in your seam allowance. However, since I'm cutting this down to 2.5, why don't I straighten that up now? Yes, our other pieces might have a little bit of that bowing in too. You're not going to see that in the overall quilt. It's certainly easy to hide that little smidge. See how it comes in just slightly there? It's certainly easy to hide that in your seam allowance and still worth cutting stacked given the amount of time you save. But since we're subcutting this anyway, and I have the opportunity, I could just move that over just a smidge and square it up, and then still be able to get my 2.5-inch strip out of this. So that's just something to watch for, that you don't, when you're cutting on a fold like that, especially in a big stack, that you don't end up with a super big arch in your fabric. Certainly one that you can make up for in the seam allowance or cut as you go. So maybe I should cut this the other way because I'm having a hard time getting this to balance on there. But and then like it's ever so slight, really. But hey, the more precise you can be, the more things fit together. So we only need 2.5. So I had the room, so why not do it? 1, 2.5. Still lots of space. And there we go. The rest of our little strings. Okay. So for your, that's it, right? 4 of each color plus the yellow. Yeah. A little bit of extra. So you can see, if you didn't miscut your yellow, that you could cut this out by stacking it really pretty quickly. And that's why when we talk about this quilt being a quick summer job, you know, you can cut this out in less than an hour for sure with the stacking. Okay, I'm going to get myself set up now for sewing. So I'm going to get my sewing machine and start putting this together. Okay, I've got the Janome 6700P here. Love this machine. Total workhorse. Some computerization, not total computerization. So it's a nice upgrade from a small machine because it's got lots of throat space, and we'll be needing that when we're quilting. But for now, we are assembling. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, since it's repetitive, how to assemble the sunshine here. Okay, so that's a full sunshine, and then one of the half sunshines, and then essentially how to assemble it all together. We don't need to put together all of these in order for you to know how to do it. So we'll do this one, we'll do this one, and then we'll assemble the whole thing, and then we'll be ready to be quilting it. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start with the yellow. Actually, we're going to start really with the yellow 4 7/8 inch squares. So the instructions to sew it sort of start here under sew, and there's not a lot of instructions. So in fact, the first half here is all just on how to make half square triangles, and then it's just sort of one line on the rest. These little photos here do help. As does how it's broken down in the quilt. So keep this handy, and I'll go ahead and show you how to do it too. So we're going to start with our yellow squares. And remember, while I'm just doing the one and then the second one, you can go ahead and do this step on all of yours. And then chain piece them if you like, or you can assemble it one row at a time. Chain piecing is always a little bit faster, so keep that in mind. So we're just taking our yellow squares, the 4 7/8 squares, and I'm drawing a line down the center. If you have like a half square triangle ruler that you draw on the other side and sew right on the line, that's great. You can use that here. Or if you have the laser, that's great. You can use that here too. So once you've got your lines on all of them, you're going to take one of your colors, and you're going to put the line right side up. And you're going to, basically we're making half square triangles because we're going to sew on either side of the line. So I'm going to take each one of my pink color here. And you might have pink, you might have purple. It doesn't matter. They're all made the same way. And you're essentially going to make 8 half square triangles from these 4 squares because they'll end up getting cut in half. So we're going to go ahead and sew a 1/4 inch on either side of that pencil line. So I'm going to do it all at once here. Make sure that everything is staying nice and lined up. Okay, and I'm not even trimming the thread. I'm just going to go right to the next one and the next side. And then after I've done all of my half square triangles with the yellow, I can go ahead and do the next side. And remember, you can do this for all of your colors. So if you're fairly new and that feels confusing, do it like with one color to start, and then maybe you'll bunch together your next 3 because you'll see how sewing them like this is a bit faster. Okay. And now I can just take this whole chain. You can snip it if you want, or go ahead and try just bringing it to your machine, not even cutting the thread. And let's try sewing just this chain. This is another little time saver. But once you get to about this point, you have to make sure that you're lining up, because you want to bring the next one in and make sure that it's still a 1/4 inch away from the line. So you do have to stop and adjust, but it does save you the step of having to trim. So see how this one's flipped? So make sure, and then we're still a 1/4 inch away. I'm using the HP foot here, which is that perfect scant 1/4 inch that Janome has on some of its machines, or that you can get for some of the Janome machines, depending on what you've got. You can let us know if this is something you would like to add to your machine. Maybe it'll, maybe you can get it as an accessory without having to upgrade machines, or maybe you're ready for some of the more high-end features. Okay, so now we've got a chain and it's sewn on both sides. And we can go ahead, and I guess it would help if I had my little snips. So you can snip in between. And then again, because I'm about short cuts, but not cutting corners, in an instance like this where we're going to basically be going down the same line, I'm going to line those up, grab a ruler, and I'm going to cut right on that diagonal line. And that's a very fast way to make those half square triangles. So let's bring them over to the iron. The pattern wants you to press these open. Full disclosure, I did on my first version of this quilt, I did exactly what they said. I pressed them open and kind of realized it didn't really matter much. So if it's saving you time to just flip them one way or the other, it's fine. They don't really get nested. So we're gonna press all of these open here. And you can see I'm like resting my iron there. That's just to keep it nice and flat since I don't have my clapper right with me. And my iron's still just heating up. but I don't mind leaving the iron on them while I open up the next one. I haven't found it burns anything. If anything, it just keeps everything nice and flat. And now on the pattern, it doesn't say to trim these to 4 7/8 or anything like that. So I've left them alone. And everything seems to fit together pretty well. Because I'm using that HP foot and it's a scant 1/4 inch, I did have a little bit of, like, my half square triangles in some spots were a little bigger than they needed to be. But that's okay. In the end, you can trim away anything that's a little larger, but don't go and trim these to any one size because you want it to all come together. And having a little bit too much is okay sometimes. All right. We got these pressed open. And pressing open, it's not the faster way, but it does keep things lying nice and flat. There we go. So bring these over, and depending on how they're sewn, you may be able to stack these again and do a little trimming of the dog ears, the little ends right here and here. Those need to get trimmed off. And so if I stack 4, and sometimes a little thicker ruler, take them all off at one time. Just make sure you are getting a good stack though, because you don't want to cut into the body of the square. You just want the ears coming off. And that ruler there is going to help protect the rest of it. Okay, so that's quick. Let's do that again for this stack. This is why sometimes tuning in, and even if you're an experienced quilter, you just pick up like tips and tricks from watching other people make something that seems pretty simple or straightforward. There's always stuff to learn and pick up and realize that you could save a little time or effort. Okay, off they go to be swept up at a future date. They'll live somewhere down here for a little while. Okay, so I've got my half square triangles ready to go. Let's just set them aside for a moment and come back to our pattern here. Because what we need to do next is assemble the sun. And we're going to take our sun center, which is the 8.5 by 8.5 inch piece. And this is where things, when you're doing many at once, get a wee bit confusing. Because you'll notice that there's one color on the top of the sun and then one color on the bottom. So you want to make sure that you're going in the order that you want yours to be in. So the gradient of color in this case, so it's from lightest to darkest. So in this case, I'm actually going to be going from orange to pink. So I'm going to pick up my little orange squares, or sorry, my little pink squares and my little orange squares. And we're going to be putting some on the top and some on the bottom. So in this instance, I would make sure, like, chain piecing is good, but also making sure you're lining up the 3 correct colors, because you're splitting your 4 3-inch squares into 2 sun blocks. So you could go ahead and put 2 over here, and then 2 over there. So I've got 2 orange and 2 pink. And so you could organize them that way. Otherwise, this is a little confusing. Well, it's straightforward once you know, but it's easy to mess up. So on the top of this one, for me, the pink or the orange is the red here, and the pink is the purple. That's the colorway I'm sewing together right now. And I'm doing these last 2. These top 2 I've already got done just for time's sake for us. So I'm going to do these last 2. So this one's orange and this one's pink for me. So I'm going to put the orange at the top, and you're going to go ahead and draw on all of your little 3-inch squares, just like we did with the half square triangles, lines down the center, okay, on all of your 3-inch squares. So you can go ahead and do that, and then we'll start our suns once you've got them all together, or once you've got them all drawn on. And once you do, you're going to take your top color. So for me, right now, that's the orange is going to be the top color. And that diagonal line should be up here, coming this way, essentially so that when it folds over, it can kind of makes the center of the sun look a little more circular. So I'm going to go ahead and sew directly on that line, not a 1/4 inch away from it, but directly on that line. And then, so that's good. So then I can take the other one and sew directly on that line again. Now, you could do every top corner for all 3 of your suns. This way it's just a little less confusing. And then your bottom color. So this time the top of the diagonal is going this way and coming down. And then again, the bottom corner, the diagonal line is starting up here and coming down. Okay. A little thread to trim. Now, in order to make this a square again, right, we need to trim off these little extras. And so you can just take your ruler and you're going to put your 1/4 inch mark on your ruler, whichever ruler you're using. Lay the 1/4 inch mark directly over top of the stitches, and you're going to cut away that remaining triangle. And you're going to do that on all of the sides. Whoops, I nearly cut right to the, so the stitches go underneath the 1/4 inch mark, so you've got a 1/4 inch left over here. And now these are still perfectly good, even though they're not used in this quilt. If you go ahead right now, while you've cut them, and just put a line down the middle, like sew a 1/4 inch right down the middle right now like this, then you will have some usable half square triangles for something future. So let's just sew them while we're at it. And you can just leave them chained together and put them in your scrap bin. So when you're looking for a little something scrappy, you've already got a little something ready to go. And you can trim it to whatever size square you need at the time that's under, 3 or 2.5 inches, whatever this ends up being. So then we just end up with a little chain in all of the colors of the different half square triangles that are ready to go for something new. So I'll just set those with the rest of the scraps, and why not? Okay, so now what we need to do is press this away from the yellow. It does say it say to press these seams open? I think it marks. It does say to press the seams open, but I think they just say that for every. There's not really an advantage to pressing it open, but we'll do what it says. I just find it takes a little longer. But when you're not nesting it, pressing open does keep everything nice and flat. And then just good. So really this should measure 8.5 by 8.5. Like we should have just replaced the corners. So you can go ahead and give it a check and see how well you did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. I'm a little wobbly on this half here, I gotta say. But it can be made up for in the seam allowance. It kind of curves in a little. That's just bad sewing. But I'm not going to sweat it. It's still going to be great, even if it is a little here and there. Doesn't matter. Keep going. Okay, so once you've got your sun center, and it should go like this because I have orange up top and pink on the bottom. We also need to make the bottom part of the sun. So sort of this part right here, or right here. And so we're going to take the matching color. So just keep an eye on your grid, on your pattern here, on which one comes next. So in this case, we'll be making it with the pink because we're finishing at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and just do the same step on this piece as well. So again, sew down right on those lines. Did I lose it here? Yep, there we go. Okay. And then again, we're kind of finishing that rectangle. There's going to be a piece in here. But just like we did with the bigger square, you can cut off those ends. We've got a few other pieces we can sew there to add to our extras pile. Let's just do it while we're at it. Okay, and then we can, again, press these seams open. Okay. So we've got our sun centers done, but basically what we want to do now is complete it with the sun rays. So I'll set my bottom sun over for right now. And this is where we kind of need to concentrate a bit because we need to build a strip up here and, you know, the sides out because we've just got the sun center done. So you're going to make a total of 3 of these and 2 of these. So let's take our 4.5-inch background squares and our half square triangles that we've made. And let's start laying some things out. So we've got 2 half square triangles in the orange. Remember, we made our half square triangles. You will have made them in all of your colors. I just made them in the pink. I have the orange already done. And it looks a little as though this centerpiece should or could be a flying geese unit, but it's actually just 2 half square triangle units with the color facing down. So you can kind of see how the sun ray is going to come up here. And then we've got a one of the 4.5-inch squares and the other 4.5-inch square. Okay. And then we've got another half square triangle unit in the orange or whichever one, you know, you're doing at the time. And you're going to make sure that it's facing down so that you're getting this like sun ray happening here. Make sure you guys can see it okay. I'll do it on this side too. Want that yellow facing up, and you can kind of see our sun coming together. Nothing's been sewn together yet. We still need another block here, so let's just move this up. I'll push the machine over just slightly so that I can get this all in the shot for you. Here we go. And we're just laying things out at the moment. We still need a little bit of assembly here before this becomes one long strip. And so now we're going to take more of the half square triangles that we just made in pink and lay out with this one facing down like this, the yellow facing down like this. And then we've still got some more. We're going to make that same unit here, but with the pink, or your bottom color. And we want to make sure that the yellow is facing up. So that's making that. And this is making this. And then we should have our 4.5-inch pink squares. Grab those. And then this is what's sort of bringing us down to that next color. Okay. So this is what that one sunshine block looks like when it's sort of laid out. So what I'm going to suggest you do first is kind of view these as 3 rows. Row 1, row 2, and row 3 right here. So let's kind of finish assembling this one so that it can act as its own row. So we need to put these right sides together and sew along. Make sure you're sewing along the right spot so you're bringing the right part to your machine. And same with right here. We're going to make sure that we put right sides together. And then we're going to sew along this part here. You do need to, or at least I found, laying out the sunblock, especially since one half is one color and one half is another color, I found less confusing. So just make sure you're laying it out. Get rid of that for the scrap pile. And then let's lay this back out again. First, we do need to press open our seams. So I'll bring these to the ironing board. So open it up. And in a couple of these, I totally sewed these the wrong way. So it's pretty easy to get turned around with all the colors being kind of similar and, you know, trying to match the colors up. So if you have to seam rip, just go ahead and do it and move on. Okay, so now this can start to act like the middle row now that these are the same size as this. We also need all of this to start, you know, being a row too. Same with the bottom. So we can start moving right sides together, but let's just do one at a time since we're moving here. So let's just finish this one off. So right sides together. And remember, I had a little bit of making up to do in the seam allowance. So we'll need to do that. So I'm going to make sure I'm watching that I'm not going over anywhere. So I'm going to take this and make sure I'm making up for whatever I need to make up for in the seam allowance. Okay, and then it's one, oh dear, did I do it the wrong way? Could I make up for it and go like this? Yes, phew, I sewed it upside down. Oh, it's still upside down. Crap, see, I told you. All right, let me get the seam ripper. Did I not just say I did this so many times? It's easy to do. Nope, there goes the seam ripper. So just really be careful. It only takes a second to rip it out if you have a sharp seam ripper. Okay, this side, up, this side. Oh God, this way, this way. Whew, I'm sweating. There we go. Now we're gonna go right sides together. 1/4 inch seam. Okay, that's better. Sometimes when they're all sitting right in front of you, it's like your brain goes like, is it right? Is it not right? So then I'm just going to sew again the other side. I'm just kind of being careful to make sure those seams that I pressed open stay flat. I don't inadvertently flip them up. Okay, good. We'll leave that for now. And we can move on to, let's go right sides together here. Right sides together here. And let's go right sides together here. Right sides together here. I always flip towards like the seam that's closest to my machine. So I know I'm sewing on this side. So when I bring them over, I know that's the side I'm sewing on. If you want to do these one at a time so it's less confusing, that's fine too. I'm just chain piecing all of these to be quick. Okay, snip everything apart and lay it out again. I'm a big fan of laying it out. If you don't lay it out, it's just how it goes wrong. Even when I lay it out, it goes wrong sometimes. So just lay it out. Okay, so there's that. And then we don't have to iron these quite yet because we're not sewing over a pressed seam. Uh-oh. This way. Phew. Okay. So now we're going to go right sides together here and right sides together here. And so and so. This is looking so fresh and cute. You see that big sun come, kind of start shining. Okay. Lay it out just to make sure. Okay, so now we do need to take this to the iron. Oh, look at that, so nice. We do need to take this to the iron, and we can either, we've got a choice here. You can press the seams open and not worry about nesting, or if you're a big nesting your seams fan, then you can kind of take the time to go inward, outward, inward, so that you can nest your seams and make sure your points are on. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going in here, keeping this, and I'm going to open the center seam or just lay it flat, whichever way it wants to go. It's not, we're not nesting the center one anyway. So there's one going in, and so these ones are going to go out. But again, you can just open them flat if you want. Lay it out. So that's, this one's going out, so this one's going in. Okay. Again, lay it out. And I'm going to go right sides together. And here is where I'm nesting that seam, just because I want those sun rays to hit right at the right spot. Grab a couple pins. And then I'll nest this seam, which is just basically butting up those two because they're facing opposite directions. Kind of feel for it, lock it into place there, and put a pin down the middle. And I'm going to sew right along here. Don't run over your pins. Try to keep your seams flat that have already been pressed. Okay, lay it out. See, nesting those, make sure that they're nice and pointy here. All right, we'll do it on this side too. Right sides together. Let's bring the, nest that seam and that seam. There we go. And we'll sew along there. Run over your pins. Okay. Here comes the sun. Do, 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 do. Ha, cute, right? I love it. Okay, so let's press our seams. These aren't going to nest, so if you don't want to press them open, you don't have to. If it feels like it would feel better to just press them to the side, who's gonna tell? No one. So here you kind of have some choice to do what you like. If it's not working, press them to the side. No big deal. In spots like the middle, you kind of have a bigger hump. You'll really feel that. So you may want to press towards the middle if that's a little more helpful. Because you can feel that bigger hump at the top of that middle half square triangle there when so many seams are coming together. And then just take a second to make sure everything is lying the way it's supposed to. Take a look if it needs a little. Okay. So what happens now is we need to finish the other sort of half sun unit so that it can, all of our suns can and half suns can be assembled together. So going with the color that's at the bottom of your full sun. So in this case, it's pink. Remember, we already did the little squares here to create the center sun. Now we need to use the rest of those half square triangles because we need to make a sun ray on, like the rays on the top again. So we're going to make that sort of V in the middle like this. Just lay it out. And we're going to take the 4.5-inch squares at the side. Remember, there's going to be that strip in here. So there's a piece to go in there. Don't sew these two together. And then we have a half square triangle here with the yellow up and the yellow up. So that's sort of our half sun unit. Once you've made a full sun unit, which is basically just like two halves, but this is a full, you kind of see how this is just like the one half of it. So let's do just what we did with the top one and start going right sides together, right sides together, right sides together. And always folding the direction that's closest to your machine so you know which side to sew on. Or you could put a little pin in the side that you know you want to sew on if you're doing every single one and you want to make sure they don't get switched around. But in this case, I think probably doing the colors one at a time will save you the confusion. Sometimes going slower is faster. And sometimes going slower is even slower. Depends on the day and the position of the moon, or the sun in this case. Okay. So again, I'll snip and lay these out so you can find your way again. Find your way according to the sun. There's no shortage of these puns and jokes, eh? Sorry, guys. Look, we're doing videos on sewing. We have to keep it entertaining, or otherwise we'll all be asleep. Wait, this is wrong. Hold on. This is supposed to be at the top. There we go. See, keep you on your toes. Got to stay awake. All right, right sides together. And right sides together here. Again, this is the side that's closest to my machine. So that's the side I'm sewing on. Okay, let's lay it out again. Okay. Where am I? Oh yeah, there. Nope. What's happening? What's happening? Did I do it wrong? This is supposed to be up. This is supposed to be up. This is supposed to be... No, what's going on? Oh no, it's right. There we go. Whew. Okay, let's press these. I'm going to press in and out so I can nest those seams. So this side's going to be in. And again, the instructions do not say to do this. I just find it's helpful to nest them so that you get those points right on the money. Okay, so this side's in. That means these ones are going to go out. And you can deal with the center one however you want. Out and, oh yeah, out. It'll become like very apparent if you've gone the wrong way once you try to nest them. So if I put this way, right sides together, and just can nest that seam there and nest that seam here. Okay, we'll put a little, I can feel it in my finger, locked. Pin it. Locked. Pin. Here we go. All right, I don't want to roll. I'm rolling over my seam there. Just make sure. Press your foot up, take my pin out. Keep those seams lying flat. Sometimes the presser foot just wants to catch on those seams that you've already pressed, so just watch for that. Okay, pin out. Okay. This way. All right, let's press it. Again, we're not nesting this anywhere, so you can deal with the seam however you like. It's naturally folding down for me, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay. So now we're going to take one of our strips. Oh, did I drop the pink one? Probably. Is it? Okay, it's at the front. You're going to have to get it. You know, sometimes things fall off the table. All right, thank you. Okay, so you've got your strips in your various colors. And you can go ahead and attach it to one of the units. It doesn't really matter because they're all going to, this is how they're all going to attach together anyway. So when we're assembling our blocks, you'll have two of these. You'll have all of your strips in between, your three sun pieces. And then, of course, you'll have your top ones too. I've gone ahead and made these. So you've got your strip and your piece. And this is when we're going to start assembling the long row of sunshines. Okay. So we'll start with an end piece. We've got our strip. Okay. Once the strip's attached, right sides together. And we can sew that. It's pretty straightforward at this point. just so you know, you're making the long sun strip before you put all the big pieces together. Okay. Lay it out. So we've got half sun strip, full sun. Okay. Let's go strip. Sew together. Okay. And once you've got your strip, you've got another half. Right sides together. Good. Okay. And so you'll just keep going like this until you have them all in a big long row. Okay, big long row. This is actually the bottom of my quilt. So once you have them all in a big long row, you're going to want to press your seams. So it's up to you. We're not really nesting anything. So again, if you want to press them all one way or another way, that's totally fine. If you want to press them open to keep things a little flatter, that's fine too. I'm pressing them whichever way they're sort of naturally falling. Careful not to destroy the seams you have already pressed. These sort of naturally want to go in, so that's the way I'm doing them. Okay, so once you have your all 5 of your suns all together, then you can take the bigger pieces that we cut at the beginning. So you've got your 2 sides, right? You've got this one, this lays out really this way. So you'll have this long strip with all of the colors, not just 2 colors. And then you're going to go ahead and sew your pieces together to match the edges, okay, in one long strip. And same with on the other side. So you'll have a long strip of the, is it 18? Excuse me, dusty. You'll have a long strip of the 18 and a half by 31 pieces, all sewn together in the right order. And then you'll also have, and just watch, these don't go this way like this. They actually go this way. So when you're sewing those together, just be conscious that you don't put them the other way. They need to fit long ways. So we can go right sides together, long ways this way with sewing the short ends. So that then we have a big long row of all 4 colors of the right side pieces too. The ones that measure 18.5 by 11. Okay, so we can press open our seams here. And remember, you'll have all of your colors sewn in one long line. I'm just doing the bottom half here just because it's repetitive, and it'll save a bit of you watching time because you're just doing the same thing over and over. I've got the top half done and ready to go. And so I'll do the same with these seams. Again, you'll have all of your colors in a big long row here. I'm going to press these seams open too. Okay. If it needs a little pressing, do it now. So everything's lying as flat as it can be. If you have something really stubborn, you could put a little, say I've got that, put a little flatter. That'll take care of it. Okay, you'll have all of yours in a big long row. And then what we can do is start attaching the big long row to our row of suns. So we'll go right sides together. Yours will be twice this size, remember. And let's just put our seams as best we can together so that they don't overlap, so that we're, pink is meeting pink and orange is meeting orange. So add some pins if that's helpful, just to kind of keep everything together and straight. The bigger something is, the more pins will help out, Okay, so I've got my big pieces here, all in succession, and I'm just going to be sewing them to the sunshine pieces. And feel free to find where your colors change on both sides and kind of put a pin right in the middle. So even if they're pressed open, you can see here, if I kind of kiss those together on the exact where the color meets and put a pin in the middle, hopefully that should protect our transition there and allow us to have that perfect transition from color to color. So here again, if you pin where those colors meet, that's going to help. And again, just a 1/4 inch seam. I just sewed a little wee wrinkle into, see here? That's going to leave a pleat in the front of the quilt because I have got my pin here and there's a little bit of extra fabric on one side than the other. So in order to, if that happens to you, that means you need to do some easing. And that's just sort of a little bit of stretching on one side versus the other in order to eliminate that wrinkle. So I'm just going to very carefully start that little section again and consciously kind of spread out that top fabric towards the edges so that the wrinkle kind of disappears into the bigger part of the quilt. Make sure everything's lined up here. Okay, so let's open it up. Good. And once you have all of your suns sewn to the bigger left-hand side pieces, then you're going to do the exact same thing with the right-hand side. And all of those pieces are going to come together and you're going to attach them in the exact same way. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew all of my right side color blocks to the sunshine pieces. again, I just pinned where the color transitioned to try to make sure that I hit those colors, so that the points were coming together as close as I could get them. And if you have a few places to trim when you're squaring it up, when you actually quilt your quilt, you can take off a few edges. No one will ever notice if things weren't totally even. So see, for example, here, this is just a smidge longer. Sometimes it happens somewhere along the way, but we'll be able to trim here once it's quilted, and we've still got lots of space for that. It'll still show as a full half sunshine there. All good. Okay, so this is the quilt top. It's beautiful transitions from light to dark. And whether you decide to long arm this or send it to us to long arm for you or quilt it yourself, you've got lots of options. So what I'm going to do now, given that we kind of promised we would do this quilt top together, I'm not going to quilt the entire thing on camera here because it just, quilting takes hours. But I will show you a couple of techniques I think look great with this Heatwave pattern. So I'll leave this one here. I'll do this one on my sewing machine, and I'm going to head over to the long arm right now and do the other one with some nice wavy lines on the long arm, so you get a look at what that looks like. Okay, so I'm at the long arm. I've already loaded my quilt top, and if you have a long arm, you will already know how to do this. If you don't, there's lots of videos. We've got videos. That's not really the point of this video. I more want to show you some ideas on how to choose a style of quilting that complements your quilt top. And the, sort of the gold standard way to do it is to long arm something, whether you do it yourself or maybe you have Pro Stitcher on your long arm, or maybe that's something you aspire to in the future. I hope you'll get a little something out of the process here. So just to keep it simple, I'm going to do some wavy lines, sort of like a heat wave going through our suns here. And the reason I've chosen that is because it doesn't detract from the suns and the beautiful piecing that we've done up front here. Instead, it's going to just offer sort of a complementary look. And I'll kind of show you, maybe you can kind of see, I've done a couple of rows of stitching already. And yeah, we'll just take a look. You can kind of see those wavy lines going through the quilt top there. And really the point of the lines, like I said, is to accentuate the overall story of your quilt. And given that this one's all about summer and the heat wave, I felt it looked like little heat waves. So whenever you're long arming, when you're loading it up, you want to baste your quilt down to your batting and your backing. You always need more batting and backing when long arming than with traditional quilting. And that's so that you've got this extra space for the long arm to move around. So I'm going to go ahead and baste this down on this side just to get us going here. And you basically baste it until you can't go any further, until you've reached the extent of your frame. I'm long arming on the Janome Quilt Maker Pro 20. This is a great machine. It's Honestly, long arms are expensive, but in terms of long arms, this is a very affordable long arm, and it does all the things that you need it to do. I've got Pro Stitcher on here, which means I can set it almost like an embroidery machine to do the quilting for me. Now, I do have to set it up. I have to roll it forward. I do have to still monitor it, but it will take care of making sure the stitches turn out perfectly. If you didn't have Pro Stitcher and you wanted to do wavy lines, you certainly could. You would just line yourself up and off you go, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And I would encourage you to do it in one fell swoop. Stopping and starting when you have something that's wavy like this, it's going to kind of give you a little jar mark. So I actually am going to use the computer just for that nice consistent flow. And I can show you how that works. So I've already measured out my entire quilt top. You can see it on the screen here. The quilt top, it's here. I'm on my 4th row of waves. So I'm going to go ahead and pick my new start, which is the next row down, take it out of basting mode and press run. And it will find the starting, gives me that first stitch so I can pull up my bottom thread. And I'll try not to block. And then I can press resume and it'll give me a few stitches and then it'll stop so that I can trim those threads. It doesn't want us running over any extra threads, and I can press resume. And it's going to go ahead and give me that consistent, wavy pattern. You can see even it slows down at the top of the waves just to make sure everything is nice and consistent. Little threads and stuff I'm pulling off as I go. It is important, even when you have the computer that or Pro Stitcher on your long arm, that you're still watching. You can run out of bobbin thread. It can snag on something. All kinds of things, trust me, can go wrong. And so I'm just going to get to the end of one row, and it's going to stop, and we'll be able to kind of jump to the next row. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the thread here. Always want to make sure you're cutting the bottom and the top thread. So I'm pulling up that bottom thread and cutting both. And now the computer knows we want to go to the next line, and it'll make its way all the way across, but it's a little faster if I just go ahead and drag it across. There we go. And then I can tell it to start at the next row. And press run, and it will find the next position. Again, lets me pull up that bottom thread. Gives me a few stitches, and then I can cut it and resume. I'm using glide thread in my machine here on the top and on the bottom. And I put this cute sunglasses fabric on the back. I just thought it was, again, totally different color scheme than the front, but the sunglasses are a little nod to what we're talking about. So I love doing something interesting on the back. Doesn't always have to be the exact color match, but in this case, I felt like the sunglasses kind of spoke to the Heatwave quilt and were a nice nod to what we were seeing on the front. So even though it's blue, pink, and white, and I have no blue, pink, or white on this quilt on the front, I still think it's the perfect match for the back. All right, so there's another row. And you can kind of see the way it goes is kind of finish one row. And if it's got a long, long stretch, you helping it over to the bottom or over to the next row just saves a little bit of time. And off to the next row it goes. And then at some point, My guess is we maybe can get one more row out of it, and then we'll have to advance the quilt up, which means we'll have to roll it up and start the next set of lines. And so whenever you guys send us a quilt to long arm for you, this is essentially what we're doing. If you wanted to learn how to long arm at home, you could order one from us with or without Pro Stitcher. It's actually more affordable than you think. So if you're interested in the long arm, you should let us know. I'll do a video lesson with you. We'll help you get it set up. If you're local, we can send someone to your house to set it up for you. But it really is fun and does get your quilts perfectly finished. Okay, got that thread. And there's a definite learning curve to long arming, 100%. So now that we're kind of getting close to the end here, I want to check on my screen to make sure I'm going to be able to get another row of stitches without hitting my rail here. We do not want to hit the rail. It looks like we should just get there. So I'm going to try it. If it hits, well, we'll have to stop it and advance it quicker. New start. Nope. Pro Stitcher allows you to like blow up your image so you can really see if you've got enough space. Just enough, I think. So let's just try it. Pull up that bottom thread. I'm loving the wavy lines across this. It's not taking away from the sunshine at all. It's sort of mixing in perfectly. Sort of like you can see the heat going across the quilt. Okay, so now it's at the end here. Cut this thread. You kind of get an idea of what this quilt will look like long-armed. I'll be taking off the clamps here, both sides, and it's going to be ready to roll up. Now, this is the part that you'll have to do. Sometimes people think the long arm will roll up the quilt on its own, but it doesn't. You have to roll it up. And I'm just gonna, just like this. And just leave a few more lines down. And then we'll start that process all over again until we've gotten all the way to the bottom. Yeah, I think this is going to look beautiful. But let's go over to the regular sewing machine now, and I'm going to show you how you can get a similar look on your regular sewing machine. Yeah. Okay, so I've got my quilt top, and I'm just sandwiching it here. Again, I'm using that cute sunglasses, but choose some sort of fun background, summer, it could even be a solid, whatever you like. And just choose your method of basting. I've gone ahead and spray basted here, so I'm not using pins. I kind of find the spray basting worth it for the mild amount of gunking up your needle that ends up happening. You can just sort of wipe a little bit of the glue away if that happens. Sometimes you get it a little bit, but it's usually not too bad. Definitely, I find more worth wiping the gunk away than having to take out all those pins. All right. So once you've got it nice and sandwiched up, what I'm going to suggest is if you have a machine that will do a serpentine stitch, this is a really great way of getting some wavy lines. Perhaps not as big as what the long arm could do, but if you don't have a long arm, this is a really good alternative. And you know, the other one is you could just do straight lines, no problem. Or you could try to free motion, but I'm going to caution you. When you're free motioning lines, as long as you're okay with them not being uniform, cool. They could intersect, it could, but free motioning these wavy lines, in order to get all the way across your quilt, it's going to mean that you have to stop. And like I said with the long arming, if you stop, it likely means that it's going to show. And you're going to have like a little hiccup in the middle of your line. So I'd suggest using a stitch, if your machine has it, that will offer you some waves, but won't really require the same kind of precision that you would need to do it free motion. So let's take a look at the stitch chart here. I'm going to have to zoom in a wee bit on here, because I'm going to show you guys the stitches. So if I'm looking at some of these stitches here and some of the decorative stitches, this is where I would suggest, because lots of you have machines that have decorative stitches. And the one I'm going to suggest for this project is on this machine, number 91. 091. It's the serpentine stitch, this little skinny S. And it's going to give us like these little wavy lines all across our quilt. It's going to look as though it's seamless, and it's going to kind of give us that heat wave look, similar to the long arm. But you know, you could go through any number of these, or like 147 here is sort of ocean waves. 149 looks like, kind of looks like heat too. So you could look at your decorative stitches and think, could I use any of these for quilting? For sure you could. So I'm going to go ahead and use the serpentine stitch and just pretend like I'm sewing straight, as if I was doing straight lines. And in order to do that, I want to have at least one reference mark for a straight line. I don't just want to like go for it and then try to follow. You'll end up by the end being all slanted. So what I'm going to do here is for my very first line, and you could start in the middle too. I'm going to start on the end. Is on my mat, I'm going to find the line, and I'm going to find the line on this side too. So here it's 15, and I'm going to make sure the line, I'm still on it when I get over here. Move my machine a little. And now the system isn't perfect, but it's pretty darn good in terms of keeping you straight. So this taped line here is going to be our reference line. You can pull it up off the mat, just turn the corners in. And essentially what I'm going to do is sew along here for my first one, and then on the other side of it for my second one. And then I'll use my quilting guide bar to keep me like accurate. I'll show you that. And I'm actually going to also use AccuFeed. Now, technically, you're only supposed to go straight when using AccuFeed. That's how it works optimally. But I have found that it's still pretty useful even when you're doing some decorative stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and use it because I've got it. All right, that straight line is straight, so I'm good. I believe in it. It's going to stay there. Get my machine back in place here. And I was using the HP foot and plate when I was piecing. So now I'm going to take off this foot and I'm going to put on AccuFeed. And if you see here, AccuFeed has this hook, and it hooks into the back of the machine. So it's sort of like an extra strong walking foot. So see how it has that hook there? When I take it off and I put it on my machine, that hook right there is going to hook actually into the back of my machine. And it's going to help power those feed dogs that are on the AccuFeed. So it's going to allow me to have extra strength. So, okay, let me get this on here. And this will snap in. See, watch. Just get it in place. We'll snap in here. Let me just loosen this up first. On. I feel like this should be going in easier than it's going in. Okay, so you click it in here and it will click into the back of, that hook will click into the back of your machine. There, it's clicked in. And that way, see that part is now clicked into that part there. It clicks in. You also want to make sure you're taking off. So I had the HP plate on, and now I'm putting on the regular zigzag plate that has the more open mouth. See that open mouth there? The HP plate has that hole instead. This one has the open mouth. That's going to allow for your needle to zigzag and swirl around. All right, so on it goes. The thread I'm using here is Deco Bob. You can use regular cotton. If you got a kit and it came with the cotton, great, no problem. You're just going to see the stitches a little bit more. I love it when quilts change color. When you see the line of stitches, but you don't necessarily see the color of the thread. And that's why I love that for this technique. So what I'm doing here is I'm lining up the edge of my presser foot with the tape. And that's acting as my guide. And then afterwards, or I could even do it now, I can put on my quilting guide bar. So it just slides into AccuFeed like this. And that's going to allow me to measure over and, you know, make sure I'm sewing totally straight as we go. So I can kind of put it out of the way for right now because I'm going to use this side of the tape as my guide. Okay. And make sure I'm in the right mode. I need to be in mode 2. And I just want to find the serpentine stitch. Okay, and on this machine, you can even press 8, and it's number 8 right on the front of the machine. Okay, so when I start sewing here, it's going to go ahead and create, albeit smaller versions, but wavy lines for me. This would be next to impossible to do myself. But oftentimes machines will come with this stitch. Let me just show you what it looks like before we get too far down the path. Can you see that wavy line here? So if you don't have a long arm, but you do have a serpentine stitch, this is going to look great. So let me just keep going. And this AccuFeed foot, it's pulling. I'll slow right down so you can see. See those feed dogs? It's a second set of feed dogs on the top. And so when you've got something heavy like a quilt sandwich, like I've got here, it's just helping pull that fabric through. But they'll also move at a fast pace. So you can put your speed up, since this is essentially the same technique as just sewing straight. You're not having to move the quilt in any sort of zigzaggy way at all. And so if you can essentially, keep your presser foot running along this tape, you can get this great wavy line just by tapping into some of the functions on your machine that you might not have even realized were there or thought you had a use for. Sometimes we see all these extra stitches and you think, I mostly just sew straight. Sorry, I can feel like a little wrinkle developing here. So I'm pulling away the basting and sticking it back together. There we go. And so this low tack tape that I've got on here, if you've gotten any of our quilts, you might have received a roll of it. It's like masking tape, low tack tape. It's about 1 inch wide. So I'm going to keep my lines about 1 inch apart. So I'll use this masking tape as my guide for my second row of stitches. All right, let's just take a look at that while we've got it here. Now, it is hard to see the color of the thread. That's because I'm stitching with that deco bob. But if we zoom in a bit, let's see. You can see those wavy lines that we really didn't have to work very hard for. It's literally just like going straight and you let the machine go ahead and put them in. And because we're going to leave about 1 inch in between, no big deal if they, aren't concaving and convexing right beside each other. So you can decide how spaced out you want them to be. I'm kind of looking at this now going, is that maybe too much space to run it again? And maybe what I should do is just leave a little, kind of feel like I should split the difference. It's going to look better. So I'm going to take off the tape since we have our baseline. And I can move my quilting guide bar to the other side. And now I can space out exactly how far apart I want my lines to be. So if I want them to be about 1 inch, I could measure over 1 inch. And I'm just going to measure it from the first stitch here. And whether it's exactly 1 inch or 1 inch and a bit, as long as I don't move the quilting guide bar, this bar stays here the same. Maybe we can see it on camera 4. That bar there stays the same. Then it really doesn't matter the measurement. We'll just leave it like that. So that looks like pretty good spacing. So I'm going to, press our foot down and start again and just keep that bar. I'm not even watching the needle. I'm actually watching right here, right to the front of that bar. And I'm keeping that bar on the top wave. And that's sort of what I'm using as my guide going forward. If you wanted, you could do this in a bright red or yellow. I like it when where it's sort of mimicking where heat waves are sort of invisible, right? So I like that we're going to be able to see the waves, but not really see the color of thread. And once you're getting comfortable, you can turn up your speed and really just be stitching right along. And it might take you a couple of sittings to complete the entire quilt 1 inch at a time. But if you have a serpentine stitch, put it to use. If you don't, you could use a zigzag stitch. You could use just a straight stitch is also good. So as you put together your Heatwave quilt, I hope you will keep the quilting of this in mind. Maybe you'll decide to do some wavy lines like us. Maybe you want us to do them for you. We're always happy to help and throw yours on the long arm too. It's always fun when you get that package in the mail and it's already done and squared up for you. Let's take a look. Nice. So you can see how these wavy lines are going to radiate across and down the entire thing. I'm going to keep on working on it. I would say I'm probably, 2 hours, 2 hours and a bit to do the whole thing with this kind of spacing. And so just take your time with it, have some fun with it. And I hope you have enjoyed putting together or watching me put together. You're going to do yours next. Your summer Heatwave quilt. This is, really fun, really cute. Just a great fresh pop of color. And I love this for like maybe your back swing or on your patio, or if you have patio furniture in the front, how nice would it be to just leave this on it on a cool summer night? You've got it sitting there, protect you from the bugs, and just sort of like give you a little fresh, feeling. A quilt always does that. So try your wavy lines. If you're interested in the pattern or the kit, you can visit homemade.ca. And I hope this has helped you in the construction of your Heatwave quilt. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.